Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gunshot shattered the silence of the penthouse like a crack of thunder, but it was the silence that followed that deafened Julian. He stood frozen, his breath hitching in a chest that was already failing him, staring at the man standing over the intruder's body. Kalen Vance didn't flinch. He didn't gasp. He didn't even look at the blood pooling on the imported Italian marble, staining the white veins with a violent crimson. He simply holstered his suppressed pistol, adjusted the cuffs of his pristine black suit, and turned his gaze, cold, empty, abyssal, toward Julian. "Dinner is served in 10 minutes, sir," Kalen said, his voice a flat baritone devoid of adrenaline or remorse. "I'll have the cleaning crew handle this refuse immediately." Julian Thorne, the billionaire CEO of Thorne Heavy Industries and the heir to a dynasty built on steel and blood, felt a shiver trace its way down his spine. It wasn't fear of the assassin lying dead on his floor. It was fear of the man he had hired to protect him. Kalen Vance was a machine wrapped in the skin of a god, tall, broad-shouldered, with features so sharp they could cut glass and eyes that looked like they had seen the end of the world and found it boring. "You just killed a man, Kalen," Julian whispered, clutching the fabric of his silk robe over his erratic heart. "He was an obstacle," Kalen replied, stepping over the corpse as if it were a dropped napkin. "My contract stipulates the removal of obstacles. Do you require a sedative before your meal? Your heart rate monitor is elevating." Julian looked at him with a mixture of loathing and a dark, twisting fascination. This was the dynamic that had defined the last 2 years of his life. Julian was the dying king, sitting on a throne of gold, his heart slowly calcifying due to a rare genetic defect. Kalen was his executioner, his guard dog, his shadow, a man who seemingly had no pulse, no morals, and absolutely no heart of his own. The city of Neoviridia was a sprawl of neon and rain, a place where the rich lived in the clouds and the poor drowned in the gutters. Julian lived higher than anyone. At 32, he was the envy of the financial world, but his body was a ticking clock. Cardiomyopathy, a sophisticated word for a simple truth. His heart was too weak to sustain the fire of his ambition. He was on the transplant list, but his blood type, golden null, made finding a donor statistically impossible. He had months, perhaps a year, left. That was why he had hired Kalen. The board of directors was circling like sharks, waiting for the blood in the water. Rivals were getting bolder. Julian needed a monster to keep the other monsters at bay. The morning after the assassination attempt, Julian sat in his office, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the smog-choked skyline. Kalen stood by the door, silent as a statue. "The Sterling Group sent the hitman," Julian said, tossing a tablet onto his mahogany desk. "Elias Sterling is getting impatient. I can pay Mr. Sterling a visit," Kalen offered. "No," Julian snapped. He hated how easily Kalen offered violence. "We are not thugs, Vance. We are businessmen. I need leverage, not bodies." Kalen's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift in his stance. "Dead men don't plot hostile takeovers, Julian. But as you command. Why do you stay?" Julian asked suddenly, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "You have enough money. You could leave. Watch me die from a distance." Kalen's dark eyes locked onto Julian's. For a second, just a fraction of a second, something swirled in those depths. Pain? Longing? But it was gone so fast Julian thought he imagined it. "The contract isn't complete," Kalen said smoothly. "And you haven't paid my bonus." Julian let out a bitter laugh. "Of course. Money. That's all there is inside you, isn't it? Coin and cold steel." "If you say so, sir." Julian turned his chair away, missing the way Kalen's hand twitched toward his own chest, rubbing the sternum as if soothing an ache that medicine couldn't touch. The weeks bled into months, and Julian's condition deteriorated. He suffered spells of dizziness, his skin turning the color of ash. He began to rely on Kalen not just for protection, but for physical support. There were nights when Julian couldn't walk from his office to the car without leaning his entire weight against Kalen's solid frame. During those moments, the Heartless bodyguard was surprisingly gentle. He would scoop Julian up, carrying him with an ease that belied the billionaire's height, shielding him from the paparazzi's flashing cameras. "Don't let them see me weak," Julian would hiss into Kalen's neck, smelling the faint scent of sandalwood and gunpowder that clung to him. "They see nothing but me," Kalen would murmur, his grip tightening. "Rest, Julian." It was a slow, agonizing burn. Julian loathed his dependency, yet he craved the touch. He hated Kalen's mercenary nature, yet he felt safest when the man was near. It was a toxic waltz, and the music was slowing down. Then came the night of the Winter Solstice Gala. It was the most important event of the season. Julian had to make an appearance to prove to the shareholders that he wasn't dying, even though he felt like he was rotting from the inside out. He wore a velvet tuxedo that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, concealing the heart monitor strapped to his chest. Kalen was at his side, looking devastating in a midnight blue suit, his hair slicked back, revealing the sharp, aristocratic lines of his face. He looked less like a bodyguard and more like a prince of the underworld. The ballroom was a sea of fake smiles and glittering diamonds. Julian worked the room, sipping sparkling water while pretending it was champagne. "Julian." Elias Sterling approached, a predatory grin plastered on his face. "I heard a rumor you were bedridden. You look surprisingly upright." "Disappointed, Elias?" Julian smirked, though sweat was trickling down his back. "Merely observant," Sterling replied, his eyes flicking to Kalen. "And you still keep this rabid dog on a leash?" "You know, Vance used to work for the syndicates. Rumor has it he sold his own brother out for a payout. A man with no heart is a dangerous pet, Julian." Julian felt a spike of anger, but before he could retort, a wave of vertigo hit him. The room spun. The lights blurred into streaks of gold. His heart fluttered, then stalled. He crumbled. He expected to hit the floor, but arms of steel caught him. The world faded in and out. He heard screaming. He heard Sterling laughing. Or was that a hallucination? "Get him to the car." Kalen's voice was a roar, a sound Julian had never heard from him. It was raw, terrified. "He's done for," someone shouted. "Call an ambulance." "No ambulance." Kalen snarled. "They'll kill him in transit." "Move." Julian felt himself being lifted. He was floating. He looked up and saw Kalen's face. The mask was gone. The stoic indifference was shattered. Kalen looked devastated. Tears were streaming down his face, hot and silent. "Stay with me," Kalen whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't wait this long just to lose you now. Do you hear me, Julian? I forbid you to die." "Why is he crying?" Julian thought sluggishly as the darkness took him. "He's just losing a paycheck." Julian woke up in his private medical wing 3 days later. The hum of machines was the only sound. He felt heavy, anchored to the bed by tubes and wires. Dr. Eris, his private physician, was checking the monitors. "You're awake," Eris said, relief washing over his face. "That was too close, Mr. Thorne. Your heart stopped twice." "Where is he?" Julian croaked. "Vance." Eris hesitated. He hasn't left the building, but he's not in the room. He's in the secure archive. He said he had to finalize the contingency plan." Julian frowned. "Contingency plan?" "Bring me my tablet," Julian commanded, ignoring the weakness in his limbs. He accessed the security feeds. He found Kalen in the basement archives, where the physical copies of the company's deepest secrets were kept. But Kalen wasn't stealing corporate data. He was sitting at a desk, a bottle of whiskey open next to him, something Kalen never touched, and he was writing a letter. Julian hacked into the room's audio. "Transfer of assets to be immediate," Kalen was muttering to himself as he wrote. "Beneficiary, Julian Thorne. Item, biological material." Julian zoomed the camera in on the papers. It wasn't a resignation letter. It was a last will and testament. And underneath it, a medical file. Julian's breath caught. He remotely accessed the file displayed on the desk. Patient, Kalen Vance. Blood type, golden null. HLA compatibility, 99.8% match for Julian Thorne. The tablet slipped from Julian's fingers. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Kalen wasn't just a match. He was a perfect match. A match that shouldn't exist. Julian scrolled frantically through the file history. The dates went back 3 years. Before Kalen was hired. Asterisk note. Subject initiated employment protocol to infiltrate Thorne security. Purpose, proximity to recipient, Asterisk. Julian's mind reeled. Kaylin had known. He had always known. He hadn't been hired by accident. He had engineered his way into Julian's life. But why? Then, Julian saw the final document on the desk in the video feed. A suicide note. But it was staged. It was detailed instructions on how to make his death look like an accident during a security breach so that his organs would remain viable for immediate harvest. The Sterling threat, Julian whispered. He's going to use Sterling. Kaylin wasn't planning to kill Sterling. He was planning to let Sterling kill him. A glorious, violent death in the line of duty, ensuring his heart could be cut out and placed into Julian's chest within the hour. He thought I was heartless. Julian sobbed, the tears burning his eyes. And he was going to give me his. The adrenaline surge shouldn't have been possible for a man in Julian's condition, but terror is a potent fuel. He ripped the IVs from his arm. The alarm screamed, but he ignored them. Mr. Thorne, Dr. Eris shouted, trying to restrain him. Get off me, Julian roared, shoving the doctor aside with a burst of hysterical strength. He's going to the warehouse. He's going to Sterling. You can't leave. Your heart. My heart is useless if he dies. Julian grabbed a discarded trench coat, throwing it over his hospital gown, and stumbled toward the private elevator. Call the security team. Tell them if they don't get to the docks in 10 minutes, I'll burn this entire company to the ground. The docks were a graveyard of rusted metal and shipping containers, lashed by a torrential downpour. It was the perfect place for a murder. Kaylin stood in the center of an open clearing, illuminated by the headlights of 3 black SUVs. Elias Sterling stood under an umbrella, flanked by 5 armed guards. I'm surprised, Sterling shouted over the rain. The great Kaylin Vance, coming to negotiate a surrender? Did Thorne finally stop paying you? Kaylin stood with his hands raised, no weapon in sight. He looked soaked, defeated, and utterly calm. He's dying, Sterling. The company is vulnerable. I want to pay out to walk away and leave the back door open for you. And why should I trust a traitor? Sterling sneered. Because I have nothing left to lose, Kaylin lied. But I have a condition. You have to make it look real. A struggle. I need to disappear, but the world needs to think the loyal dog died defending his master. It's better for my reputation in the underworld. Sterling laughed, a cruel, jagged sound. You want a warrior's death? How poetic. I think I'd rather just shoot you like a dog. Sterling raised his hand. The guards raised their rifles. Kaylin didn't brace himself. He relaxed. He closed his eyes. He lowered his mental shields, ready to accept the darkness so that Julian could have the light. Live for me, Julian, he thought. Asterisk, take this heart. It beat only for you anyway. Asterisk. Fire. The gunfire erupted, but not from Sterling's men. A sleek armored limousine smashed through the chain-link fence, drifting sideways to create a wall of steel between Kaylin and the shooters. The rear window rolled down. Kill them all. Julian's voice screamed over the intercom. Thorne's security teams rappelled from the shadows of the shipping cranes, unleashing a hail of suppressive fire. It was chaos. Sterling's men scrambled for cover. Kaylin stood frozen, staring at the limousine. The door flew open. Julian stumbled out into the rain, barefoot, his hospital gown clinging to his skin, his face pale as death. You idiot! Julian screamed, staggering toward him. Julian. Kaylin broke his trance, sprinting forward to catch Julian just as his legs gave out in the mud. He shielded Julian's body with his own as bullets pinged off the shipping containers around them. What are you doing? You're killing yourself. Me? Julian grabbed Kaylin's lapels, shaking him weakly. You were going to let them kill you. I saw the file, Kaylin. I saw the donor match. Kaylin froze. The gunfire seemed to fade into the background. He looked down at Julian, his mask of indifference completely gone, replaced by a raw, bleeding vulnerability. It's the only way, Kaylin choked out. You're running out of time. I'm just a bodyguard. You changed the world. It's a fair trade. It is not a trade. Julian slapped him, a weak, wet sound against Kaylin's rain-slicked cheek. It is my life, and I do not consent to buying it with yours. Do you think I could live with that? Do you think I could look in the mirror and hear your heart beating in my chest, knowing you're rotting in the ground? I love you, Kaylin roared, the confession tearing out of his throat like a physical wound. I have loved you since the day you pulled me out of that orphanage 20 years ago. You don't remember, do you? You were the rich boy on a charity tour. You gave me a toy soldier and told me to be brave. I made myself into a weapon for you. My heart has always been yours, Julian. Let me give it to you so you can live." Julian stared at him, the memory surfacing through the fog of years. The dirty-faced boy with the fierce eyes. "I remember," Julian whispered. "I remember the soldier." A bullet whizzed past Kalen's ear. "We have to go." Kalen tried to lift him. "No." Julian pulled Kalen's face down and kissed him. It tasted of rain, salt, and desperation. It was a kiss of defiance. "If we die, we die together. But you are not dying for me." Suddenly, a deafening boom shook the ground. Sterling's SUV exploded in a fireball. Thorne's tactical team had arrived with heavy ordnance. The remaining mercenaries scattered like rats. Silence returned to the docks, save for the crackle of fire and the hiss of rain. Kalen fell to his knees in the mud, clutching Julian against his chest. He was shaking. The invincible assassin was sobbing into the billionaire's neck. "Don't ever do that again," Julian rasped, his vision tunneling. "You're fired. As my bodyguard." Kalen pulled back, panic in his eyes. "I'm rehiring you." Julian managed a weak, arrogant smirk. "As my partner. And we'll find another heart. I have billions. We'll buy a hospital. We'll invent a mechanical one. I don't care. But this one," he placed a hand over Kalen's racing heart. "This one stays exactly where it is." 6 months later, the recovery had been brutal. Julian had been placed on an experimental LVAD, left ventricular assist device, pump, a mechanical bridge keeping him alive while they waited for a donor. It was a metal box connected to his abdomen by a driveline, powered by batteries he wore in a holster. He sat on the balcony of a private villa in Lake Como, the sun warming his face. Kalen walked out, carrying a tray with tea and medication. He looked different, softer. The black suits were gone, replaced by a loose linen shirt. "Time for your meds," Kalen said, setting the tray down. Julian looked at the batteries sitting on the table. "I'm essentially a cyborg now." "You're alive," Kalen said, sitting on the arm of Julian's chair. He ran a hand through Julian's hair, a gesture so tender it still made Julian's chest ache. "We got the call," Julian said softly. Kalen froze. "A donor. A match. In Zurich. A motorcycle accident." Julian took Kalen's hand. "We fly out in an hour." Kalen let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for half a year. He leaned down, resting his forehead against Julian's. "I was ready to give it to you," Kalen whispered. "I still am." "I know," Julian replied, tracing the line of Kalen's jaw. "You thought I was the heartless one, treating you like a tool. But you were the one willing to cut yourself open. You were the fool, Kalen Vance." "I'm your fool." "Good." Julian kissed him, deep and slow. "Because once I have this new heart, I plan on using it to love you for a very, very long time. And I expect a high return on that investment." Kalen smiled, a genuine, rare smile that reached his eyes. "Deal." And that is how the dying king saved his night, proving that sometimes the only thing stronger than a heart of gold is a will of steel forged in love. If you enjoyed seeing Julian risk it all to save the man who wanted to die for him, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you accept a heart transplant if you knew your lover had to die to give it to you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Julian, frail but elegant, wearing wet hospital gown and trench coat, kneeling in mud, desperate expression, holding face of man 2. Pale skin, dark hair wet from rain. Man 2. Kalen, muscular build, wearing soaked black suit, kneeling, crying. Protective posture, intense emotional expression, hands gripping man 1's waist. Background is dark rainy shipping dock. Industrial containers, dramatic headlights from car backlighting them, falling rain, puddles reflecting light, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere, sharp focus, intricate details.